Okay.
Hell. Okay, I think we have a delay. Hello and welcome back to Confrontation. Today with Shammah from STEM Chat. Yeah, for you it's early in the morning, for me late in the evening. So hey, hope we will go through this very well. Welcome to the podcast. Um, we met actually 2 weeks it is now ago at the Ecash event in Prague. So it was a very interesting event, and I really liked your presentation there. So I thought it's also very cool to share with my viewers your opinion, what you're doing, your ideas, and your experience in blockchain. So maybe Shammah, introduce yourself, tell a bit about you, what you're currently doing, what you have done so far. Stage is
Yeah,
yours.
great. Yeah. So uh been a software engineer for quite a while. Um in 2017, a friend of mine started working on Bitcoin Cash, Amari Sachet. Still can't quite pronounce his name. And we had known each other from uh other endeavors. And at the time, I didn't really believe that Bitcoin could scale. But he's a great engineer, and he really knew the protocol a lot better than I had, and convinced me that it could scale, and he needed some help. So, quit my job and started working with him on that. Uh, Learned an absolute ton about Bitcoin protocols. Um, we talked a lot about wallets. But also learned a lot about crypto communities, how they operate, like what gets people together, why they work on this stuff, and why they're passionate about it. Uh, my reasons for being passionate about it was interesting because I have very different reasons than like a lot of the Bitcoin Cash or Bitcoin maximalists or people that really like Ethereum. My reasoning for being interested in cryptos seems to be very different from most other people. Um, but one of the things that we had kind of noted was that wallets don't have a way to communicate directly with one another. And this means that on Bitcoin, like any of the interactive protocols, like just even a simple multi-sig wallet, either requires like some kind of centralized server where it's proprietary to that wallet. So both parties would need to use the particular wallet, like BitPay's wallet, or like Electrum, you have to like export the transaction as base64 and then send it to whomever over some other communication mechanism. Then they have to sign it and broadcast it. Also, very inconvenient. The user experience is pretty terrible. On Bitcoin Core, there's not a lot of different transaction types that you can do. But on Bitcoin Cash, we had a lot of the old opcodes back. So there's a lot of ability to do different things. And the infrastructure just was never created. So I started working in 2019 on something that I call at the time Cash Web, and then the front end being Stamp. And it's uh, based on a concept called RPOW, which is reusable proof of work. And that's actually an idea from Hal Finney, who is one of the original Bitcoin developers. And some people even believe that he's Satoshi. I don't know, but there's some good reasons to believe that's possible. So that's what I've been working on since about June of 2019. And I'm really hoping that that'll change the crypto space in a more broad way than people are looking at right now. I think there's a lot of possibilities for crypto that people for a specific niche that only crypto can provide. And I'm hoping to build enough of a prototype that people will really understand its value and start building these type of solutions out with me.
Yeah. And that is basically the communication between wallets is basically what is Stamp Chat, right? This is exactly that.
Yeah. So at a high level, there's a white paper on the Stamp Chat website, but at a high level, the internet used to be decentralized, right? Every ISP was in your little town. They got a T1 line from AT&T or whoever the the telecom provider was. They had banks of modems right there in their little office. That was probably a closet. You dial into them. You got a shell account. You had a plan file, and you could send and receive emails, and your account was with them. And then slowly over time, that infrastructure, due to spam, a couple of reasons. One is that you moved to a different town and your email address had to change. And then you had to go to everybody and be like, oh, my new email is this, right? Or you had to go to every website and like change your email. This is totally infeasible right now. I have so many things attached to these emails. I can't change. I'm pretty much stuck with I guess I could take a week off from work and like go to every website that I have in my password manager and like update the email, but it would be very, very time consuming. And so people have gone to these like centralized email providers in order to avoid that, right? If they move, they change universities, something like that, they don't use their emails. And then the other thing has been spam. And by using a centralized email server, they can do a lot of AI and various other, they have a bunch of heuristics, some email analysis, and they're able to like keep that stuff from completely flooding your inbox. Although it's kind of interesting because we trade this like generic spam that would just fill up everything for like a limited amount of spam, right? They offer that you're now the product, and they have like they're the gatekeeper of what can get to you. And
there's a reason why the email programs are for free, right? I mean,
yeah,
they don't give you the services for free for nothing.
Yeah, exactly. And then in some ways, people, because of the spam, have also moved to like WhatsApp and Telegram and SMS, right? But even now, I get a fair bit of spam on SMS, right? A lot of like 0-day links, like, oh, some I don't have an account with Wells Fargo, but I'll get a link like, oh, your Wells Fargo account needs to be verified. Click this whatever link and have a rootkit installed on your phone. So I think those are like the main two problems that have led to kind of centralized internet. Usenet's sort of dead. A lot of people, in order for people to even find your website, they kind of have to go through Google, and you have to do all this SEO, and then they have AdWords, right? So like some people, you can either do the SEO route, or you can do AdWords, or you can do both. And the same kind of thing on like Reddit and Twitter. Like you can have promoted tweets, or you can try to like manipulate the algorithms with botnets and whatever. And that kind of gets us back to the idea of RPow, where and somewhat Hashcash, right? They're kind of similar ideas. So Adam Back, who cited in the Bitcoin white paper, developed this idea of Hashcash, where you take an email and you do proof of work, and you grind some knots, and then that's expensive, right? Like it has some real world cost to it. And so you can sort your email box on whether they had some threshold of proof of work. And if people are, spamming, they have to spend a lot of money on electricity, because the current model for email is that the cost of sending an email is on the receiver, right? It's on your attention, right? It doesn't really cost anything for the email service to store this stuff. It's minor, but having 10,000 emails a day and trying to figure out which ones are important or not is actually like, that's the cost. to your attention, the most valuable resource in the universe. That's actually the market that all like Pinterest, Twitter, Facebook, Google, they're all in this marketplace, right? They're like their main competitors, even though they don't necessarily seem like it. Like Twitter and Google are competitors. What do you mean? Like you're competing for your attention.
Yeah,
it's being advertised to you.
We know this as somebody who's doing YouTube videos. I know this very well. I mean, the YouTube algorithm is very clearly made for grabbing the attention of the viewer, right? I mean, this is all it is about, like YouTube thumbnails, video watch time, things like this. It's all just focused on maximum attention of the viewer. Yeah, it is like that, definitely.
Yeah, so Hashcash didn't catch on, and then RPow takes that idea, because Hashcash, for every email, you have to do this. Right? You have to do this hashing algorithm. Hal Finney's idea was to like somehow make these hashes reusable. So like if the recipient got the email and was like, oh, this email is not spam, they could like give this hash back to a server that would then allow that to be reused in some way. But of course, this doesn't really work. Use a centralized server, and then the email, like the hashes are no longer associated with a particular email. So you can't just like verify it locally. You need to ask the server if the hash is this like proof of work is valid, and that ends up making a currency sort of like Bitcoin, right? But it just couldn't work in that way. And then Bitcoin came along, and Hal Finney became interested in that because Bitcoin takes this concept of proof of work and sort of makes it reusable by creating a token from the proof of work, right? So if you receive a Bitcoin, somebody did some proof of work. So you have a proof of work, and then you have a proof of work. And it in a way, it allows you to reuse the fact that somebody burned some electricity, right? So it's costly to make. But nobody's taken that idea and done anything with it. Like that's sort of been lost on the Bitcoin community in a way. But you can do cryptographic operations to show that a particular transaction is associated with an email. I could send you a transaction that has an output that is constructed in such a way as that it's unique to an email. And then you could be the only one that spend it. Unfortunately, that doesn't really solve the like moving email addresses around problem. The SMTP protocol is pretty like it's well established, but it's also very complicated to implement. Like it's over time, it's like good luck at implementing your own SMTP server. Basically, it's not something that you probably want to do. That's kind of the current state of the internet, is that all of these federated and decentralized services have rolled up into like Gmail, Hotmail, Google, Bing. There's a few major search engines, and it's all around content moderation. Like we have too much content. There's too many things on the internet, and finding the good things is very hard. That's the current state of the world, and it's a problem I really want to solve. I don't think that these corporations, especially with the power they receive by having that unique position of being able to moderate content, is something that should be in the hands of a human being. Right? There needs to be no single person that can like point at a piece of content and say like, let's erase that. This is like a very 1984-esque thing, and any power that can be abused is going to be abused, and anybody really paying attention is seeing that this is happening right now.
Of course.
Now the trade-off is that if you don't have that power, then like some things on the internet are going to be stuff that you don't want to be on the internet, right? But freedom of speech sort of necessitates this. You like some things you don't want, some things you do want, and that kind of goes back to the proverb I don't think it's actually Locke or I forget who said it, but it was in like a biography of another philosopher of like, I'll defend, I may not agree with what you have to say, but I'll defend your right to say it to the death. And that kind of gets us where we are. And it's not just about censorship and moderation of simple ideas, but your right to transact, to participate in the financial system. Like you say the wrong thing, right? You get taken off PayPal and Indiegogo and well, not Kickstarter too, but people don't fundraise in the same way there. Uh, Visa will take you off, and then we have these new ESG scores. I think what environmental and social good score, is that what it is?
Yeah,
I was surprised to hear about that at
governance. Yeah.
the Ecash conference. I had no idea about that, and that it's creating a situation where there's tons of malinvestment in the economy, because you had Google and Facebook and whatever, but if you take a step back, you have these centralized financial institutions that are just making all these decisions
I
as
mean, but
well.
now
Like,
it's not just financial institutions, and in Europe, I think it's much more present than in the US. That might be also the reason why you haven't heard of it. But actually, if you're a
yeah,
business in Europe, you cannot get around that because as soon as you apply for European money, for European grants, for funding, for credits, whatever, you always have to go through ESG scoring. That's usually done by different questions. Like, I mean, a lot of American VCs are already doing that by themselves, but in Europe, it's actually, if
yeah.
anybody spends European money, it's mandatory. So, yeah,
It's
we've done
I
this a lot.
understand that. I understand the ideas behind these things. When I was in my teenage years and like early 20s, I was sort uh, of the opinion that government, like, should manage all this stuff. Like, I didn't think that like polystyrene was something that businesses should use, so like the government should outlaw it. I think there's some examples of this stuff, but then once I started getting involved in once I was friends with Omri, he's the only anarcho-capitalist I knew at the time, and I was just like, you're insane. Like, why would you want people to just do whatever they want? And I started listening to some podcasts and stuff that he sent me around economic calculation problem, as well as the I forget I'm not, these are not my particular interests in this, but the action axiom is basically, I'm a mathematician, physicist, kind of, it's like my main interest. And so these arguments were very persuasive to me of this idea that you have more information than I do about your particular life, right? Now, you might not be as have like as good of a decision making facilities as somebody else, but you still have more information, and so it still makes sense for you to make the most efficient decision for your particular situation in life, right? And so that combined with understanding the economic calculation problem really opened up my mind and just be this view that you should just make everything as free as possible. And that's going to be the best possible situation, both for the environment. So I think that like maintaining the environment is super important. Like, I don't think anybody wants the environment to be all messed up, right? We have to live in it. Nobody wants there to be shit where they're eating, so to speak.
Yeah, but I mean, government, yeah, you have a very good point because government is sometimes, even if they put it on their flags, not the most efficient in that. Let's see, Germany, where we outlawed, yeah, outlawed nuclear energy now to burn brown coal, which is like the
Yeah.
dirtiest, the dirtiest coal imaginable. So, yeah.
This is why I got out of nuclear in a way. I was very, very interested in power generation. We really should be going to nuclear, not solar. Solar isn't really the answer. Like you look at
Not for base load.
how many.
Not for base load.
No, not at all. And it's just a political problem. Like in the US, the laws around things are kind of fascinating, like thorium so if we were to use breeder reactors, we'd have about 300 years of electricity from like uranium-238, right? If we use thorium, we would have like 3,000 years. And instead what's happening is we're pouring all this money into like fusion research, which is like, I don't know, I would prefer to have 3,000 years of runway and then like maybe, have fusion developed after that, like from a prioritization aspect. It's even the laws in the US and this causes, market problems, is that thorium is technically radioactive, but its half-life is ridiculously long. Like it's not a problem for people because it's such a mild level of radioactivity, but it's technically legally radioactive, and there's tons of it. It's like almost as abundant as lead, but we have no rare earth metal we have in the US tons of rare earth metals, but it's almost always found with thorium. So then people that were mine rare earth metals in the US have this problem of nuclear waste disposal, even though it's not really, even though it doesn't really matter. And so this makes it so that China is producing like all the rare earth metals in the world. And it's just because of these like silly regulations that the government probably just shouldn't even, be involved in. There's always unintended consequences, right? Every law that people make, there's probably worse unintended consequences.
Yep.
That's what I've learned as I've gotten older, found out more things about the world and examined government a little bit more. So that kind of brings us, back to Stamp Chat. The two things that I really care about is uncensorability. Like people need to be able to say these things without being deplatformed and unpersoned. And not only that, I want to get rid of spam, because the other form of censorship is like there's two forms of censorship. There's one where someone prevents you from speaking, they remove you from the forum. And there's another form of censorship where people come onto the forum and just spam it to the point where nobody else can say anything, they actually get seen. And I've seen that happen on a variety of internet forums. It's actually interesting. There's like unclassified documents from the FBI around how they do this. Like there's the tactics of how they.
Russians are very good at it. Russians are very good at it.
There's a forget the exact name of this Air Force base, but there's a few Air Force bases where like most of the Reddit traffic comes from. And now they are government employees, so maybe they're just sitting around browsing Reddit, but the amount of traffic it's highly suspect.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I mean, all governments are involved, right? Chinese, we know it. From Russia, we know it. I mean, I live not far from Russia, so during the current situation, of course, there's a lot of like these troll farms, very, very well known in Russia. I mean,
yeah.
So it's definitely happening.
Yeah. So the core concept around Stamp is, if you want there to be a free and open decentralized system at this point, you would just end up full, it would end up full of spam, right? Like you sign up with Telegram or any of these things, or WhatsApp or Signal, they're still attached to like a phone number or an email or something like that. That's a scarce resource. Like it's actually hard for people to get these things at this point. You know, if you require an email and you only allow certain providers to be like sign up roots for an identity, if you spam on Telegram and it only takes a few pieces of reports for you to get blocked there permanently, and you've lost that phone number or email, you can't sign up again. So that actually costs something to the person spamming. So you need a way to moderate this content. And I found RPow to be very fascinating. I think it was an idea worth exploring, and it solves a lot of problems all at once, because you can create an open protocol for wallets to communicate directly, so they can do these more complicated transactions on UTXO-based systems, which is very important for scalability. Account-based cryptos have a lot of scalability problems, which I won't get into, but any of these smart contracts that require multiple passes of signing or like cryptographic commitments need that inter-wallet communication. And then you also need it not to be a centralized service. And so by recognizing that you can attach real value by cryptographically attaching a transaction to some kind of message that is off-chain, I can now send you a message over this decentralized system that doesn't have a moderator, and you as the end recipient can choose to pay attention to it or not based on how much was sent to you. And that's the core concept around Stamp. And the real innovation there is the backend system that we're developing, right, that allows these messages to be passed around. You can build any kind of bots or build the ad system on top. Like, I'm sure there will be one eventually, but at least it pays you, right? It'll be lesser amount of spam. But kind of the proof of concept is like, can two humans just like exchange some messages? The smartest of contracts, right?
So basically what you generate like this is the cost to the user is basically the payment with a cryptocurrency, right? So you have like a cryptocurrency connected to that, and by exchanging a message, be it between two humans or by posting it in a bigger group, it's basically the amount of resources that person invests.
Correct. Yeah. Which is it's interesting. There's this proverb: "Put your money where your mouth is," and that's kind of true. Yeah. There's and this brings a number of criticisms. Like, a lot of people are like, "Why would I want to pay to message someone?" And it's sort of like the wrong way to view it. It's like, why wouldn't you want to get paid to receive messages? Right. Yeah. But it's not necessarily attractive to somebody who doesn't receive a lot of messages. But if you're somebody who is like, I have this problem fairly often, is I don't have a social connection. Somebody who is kind of a thought leader in the space, right? And maybe they even have their Twitter DMs open, and I want to talk to them. Try to send them a message, but it just gets lost in like all the messages that they receive. And they're definitely not going to post the email address. It's like, how do you get in contact with them? There needs to, like, I wouldn't mind sending them like $100 to get them to pay attention. I think one of the few influencers that seems to allow this is Michael Malice, but he has his own custom website where you like donate crypto with a message, right? And then he'll post it on Twitter and respond to you. And that's kind of what Stamp is for. It's like being a more generic system so that these people can get on there, and then I can spend $100 to talk to them. And so that's the real value. But it's also, if if you want a free and open internet, maybe you should suck it up and pay $10 a month in messaging fees. But it also, part of the thing with RPow is if you're talking to friends, you're just transferring the same value back and forth. It's not really costing you anything. You just have some like money locked up in this messenger. Like, $10 will last you forever if you're just messaging back and forth. What is the the threshold for what will get your attention in your inbox is up to you with this. And so, it just makes your job as a moderator of what content you receive a lot easier.
I mean, it depends also, right? If a friend of you writes you, you will read it no matter like how much value is connected to that. But if somebody who you don't know writes you, you might factor that in. But that's up to the user, right? It's not up to
Yeah, exactly. It shouldn't be up to Google. It was like, yeah, you sent me an email for this podcast, went to spam. I was like, around for it, it wasn't.
Yeah, that's exactly the problem.
So that's the core idea around Stamp, and it remains to be seen if I can get people to adopt it.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a few interesting aspects of Stamp that people maybe don't realize is there was a blog post about this a while back from, what is it, Nicholas Taleb? I think it could be wrong. I think his last name is Taleb. I don't like a lot of his content, but this particular blog post made a lot of sense. There's tyranny of the minority. And the basic idea that he's presenting is like, if you go to the grocery store and you pick up like any item and you look at it, somewhere on there, it's probably going to say like it's kosher and halal. And why is that? Like almost everything in the grocery store, even though like people with these dietary restrictions are like a relatively small percentage of the population in most of the US. Businesses want them to be able, they want to be able to service that market and make more money. And it's relatively inexpensive for them to just not, break the dietary restrictions of Muslims and Jews. And if you sort of see this with vegans as well, like the store shelves are filled with like vegan products because they have this dietary restriction, and you go to restaurants and there's some vegan option, and it's because of this like ideological religious devotion to some kind of dietary restriction. And there was I don't know if this last year or 2 years ago, but WhatsApp, after they got bought by Facebook, changed their terms of service, and you saw this mass exodus from people over to Signal.
Yeah.
And I don't know about you, but I have like 15 different messengers on my phone.
But now, yes, a lot of different friends.
Why? Yeah. Why do you have all these messengers? What's the like? Yeah, let me know. Why?
I mean, like friends jump to WhatsApp, right? And from WhatsApp to something else, and everybody to something else. So you ended up, if you want to communicate with that friend, right? You ended up with a new messenger on your phone.
They're like, don't talk to me on WhatsApp anymore. I'm not using it. Talk to me on Signal, right? I refuse, right? I am ideologically opposed to WhatsApp at this point.
Yeah, then you have Telegram.
You must join the cult of Signal. Yeah, you must join the cult of Signal in order to. Yeah, they're almost religious in nature.
Yes.
In order to communicate with me, you must use this kosher messenger. Uh, and then you end up, if you're not like an ideologically motivated person, then you just end up with all these different messengers to talk to all your different friends. It's quite an obnoxious situation at this point.
Yes.
But crypto adoption is kind of stalled in some ways. Like it's just become a speculatory vehicle, and you're like trying to sell a product in order to get people to participate. Like they have to go and buy tokens on an exchange. So the interesting thing with doing a messenger like Stamp is that it is identical to onboarding someone to crypto. And not only that, like if you want your friend to use it, you sort of have to pay them. Here's some tokens you can kind of back to me. Okay. And so in some ways it solves the onboarding problem. You have this, I'm not going to, you have to use this messenger with me. I want to use this private messenger. And it gets other people installed and onboarded to crypto in a way that you can't do with just pure crypto. And it immediately provides a product. Like a lot of people in the Bitcoin Cash base were like merchant adoption, whatever. You really need the particular niche for crypto is online payments. And
Yes.
you need a valuable resource that people are willing to buy. And so if you want to see crypto adoption for, in order to prevent censorship, in order to prevent speech censorship, but also financial censorship, which arguably is speech censorship, you should be ideologically motivated to use what I would say, an ethical social networks and ethical money. And by using services like this, it gives us a way to essentially provide your attention as a product. You're saying, I'm only going to use these ethical services and you can get my attention on them. And so now there's an incentive for people to onboard to crypto. Assuming that you have, assuming your attention is valuable. And there's a lot of people whose attention is very valuable, right? It depends on this person and how well known they are and that sort of stuff. So it provides an interesting onboarding opportunity where there's an immediate product that doesn't require any kind of real world goods to be exchanged. Because that's one of the other problems with crypto is that even if you think of the main, the very base of sort of the supply chain of crypto, you have miners. They have electricity costs that are not valued in crypto, it's valued in USD. And they mine crypto and they have to sell a certain amount of crypto to pay this USD cost, right?
Yeah.
But when it's a digital product like attention, you can absorb any changes in price fluctuation, right? And if it's if the crypto in some cases is burned for like broadcast messages, now it doesn't come back out of the ecosystem, right? You're spending crypto on something that is uniquely positioned to have crypto be spent on it. And I'm not saying that merchant adoption and these other things are bad, but you need a base use case, a base utility that nothing else can provide, right? With fiat currencies, it's taxes. The fact that you have to pay taxes means that it has value for all these other businesses to use, right? Sort of why there aren't third-party currencies. You could go and issue your own currency at paper, right? You could put all of the work into making non-counterfeitable paper and developing a reputation, but what do people actually use that currency for? You're going to have to convince businesses to accept it in addition to USD, and they can't pay their taxes with it, so they're going to immediately have to come back to you and exchange it for USD to pay other bills. Yeah. It's just not possible to have that kind of adoption, and that's the problem that a lot of crypto faces right now. Is there's nothing except for like Silk Road and some of these other things that used to exist. Now mainly people are using like Monero and maybe Zcash to make these purchases. So those privacy currencies are uniquely positioned, but then a lot of exchanges just can't support them because of like ESG and whatnot, probably, right? Like, can you buy Monero? Like, I don't know what exchanges you buy Monero on, but I know that some countries have banned privacy coins from any like reputable exchange in their country.
I think this is also giving directly a problem, right? Because if you have a system that is only used for illicit things, what are considered illicit, you're directly considered criminal by association with these things, right? And this is, I think, the
Correct.
general problem that you have. Like, yes, I mean, this was in the beginning, right? Bitcoin was basically for many years only used for Silk Road. So it had like it was basically like having crypto was like, okay, why you have crypto exactly? Like, what are you doing with that? Why you need that? Like, it was directly suspicious, and I think this is the general problem of that, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a number of these problems with crypto, and I personally believe, and I would, be happy to go into more detail of how having something like this solves sort of the three core problems with crypto all at once.
Yeah.
But it is hard to get people to really understand that they have to make they have to take a personal risk initially to get something like this off the ground. Like, they have to risk some of their time or some of their attention to participate with a group of arguably crazy people that want to change the world. Right? It is slow to build a brand new messaging system from the ground up like this, because the value of a messaging system is follows Metcalfe's law, just like cryptocurrencies. It's proportional to the square of the number of users, right? Like, if I have the telephone and I'm the only person with the telephone, it isn't very useful to me. And if it's only you and me, I can only talk to one person. And the more people I can talk to, it becomes exponentially more valuable as a system. And so it requires some people to sort of use something that's not super useful yet, right?
I mean, this
for reason. Go.
Yeah, no, this was always my question. I think this is also one of the questions I want to solve with that channel, also for me personally, because I was always wondering. I mean, you have cryptocurrency, right? We discussed already. You discussed it already. Like, it's basically purpose as payment, right? Online payments is the basic purpose. Why that was even thought out, but then on the other hand, you don't really have something you can pay with that, which makes sense. I mean, there is not much you can currently do with that. And I have also the feeling that the things that are created always are self-referential towards the community. So, like, crypto people develop products for other crypto people, which then use these products and get other crypto people about this excited. What is kind of missing is a little bit the reach outside, right? Like just to get another crypto person buy your coin or your DeFi product or whatever it is, even if it's a chat system. That will not change anything. We still the same community of people doing the same thing as before, maybe a little bit more, a little bit better. And there are a little bit see the problem, because the crypto scene, we're all early adopters. All of us are used to, like, things are not working, things are complicated. I need 3 different wallets to do something. If I want to transfer, okay, this wallet is not working with this, then I have to download another one. And it's like super complicated. Nobody wants that.
And then there's the chat app system. thing is like, I only accept Monero. I only
Yeah.
Bitcoin Cash. I only, and it's like,
Yeah.
I want to maybe like pay a developer in some other place to do some work, and like wire transfers are expensive, so it makes sense to settle in crypto. And then it's like, oh, they only accept USDT on Tron, and it's like, okay, well,
Yeah,
so like
I had a discussion with my wife
like,
actually a while ago about that. Like I said, like, oh, I have some crypto there, and she said like, oh yeah, we need to buy this and this. Maybe you can get it. And I was like, yeah, but it's not that easy to get it out of there. And she was like, why do you have it then? I mean, that's an honest question, right? Which I think
yeah,
many people who are not excited about like let's say um I mean, what gets most people excited is right, like freedom is like the possibility to build like a free monetary system. But the truth is that most of the population doesn't really care about that, right? They want
yeah.
convenience.
You need no
Yeah.
exactly, and this goes back to tyranny of the
Yes.
minority. You need a way to get this minority of people who believe that we should not be censored, and we should be able to transact freely. And I'm not saying that like there shouldn't be actions that are illegal, but you the police should go investigate those, right? Like they should do that out of band. Like communicating on the internet isn't um, where it should happen, but
Yeah.
you need a way to refuse to do something
Mhm.
unless other people participate on your terms. So that this like 10% of people that actually care about freedom can say, if you don't care about freedom, I'm not going to talk to you, right? You have to talk to me using a system that is free. And that's how you get this like broader adoption of it. But you also have to make the tools easy. Like they have to not really care about what's behind the scenes as far as
Exactly.
crypto,
I
right?
think the problem is not the payment, right? It's still
Uh,
that it's complicated. I mean, if I want to be onboarded on a crypto system, I have to basically know how to get that crypto, right? And that's I think the
yeah.
general problem currently. Why there is
Well,
some kind of gap.
yeah. Yeah, so that was actually something I originally tried to do this on Bitcoin Cash
Yeah.
because it has the transaction throughput I need, and it has it's at least somewhat like ideologically aligned with how I perceive things. But what I found is that people would say it was interesting. They're like, "Oh, cool, yeah, you should do this on Bitcoin Cash. Can't wait to use it." But there was no interest in like actually helping me or paying for things, right? Like it was interesting because it's sort of like a libertarian, like anarchist community. And so what you see is like every dev has to have their own wallet. They don't want to work with any other devs. And nobody's getting really paid. It's a lot of people that were in crypto early, so they're just like living on an island. They're in the wilderness, and they've got a lot of bitcoins, and they're software engineers, so they just like tinker around. And so you have this like ecosystem of like half finished wallets on Bitcoin Cash, and nothing really professional. Where the few professional wallets are like filled with ads because wallets don't, right? They don't have a way to make money. Like people are
Mhm.
like, why don't you just make a wallet that pays the developers for every transaction or something, or just start a tax? Like people are not going to use that one. They're going to use other ones, right? Like, and so you have to offer this free product with ads. Like open the Bitcoin.com wallet. It's kind of a joke at this point. Unfortunately, it used to be much simpler. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of these little problems. They're like little small problems here and there that all sort of have to be fixed together. And not a lot of correspondence between people about agreeing what these problems are and actually coming up with ways to solve them. Um, and I care deeply about solving all these problems. And I'm not. I'm a. consider myself a pragmatist, right? Like my core ideology is digital sovereignty. Like people should be sovereign over their identities online and what they can and can't say and who they can and can't talk to and what transactions they can and can't make or they will and will not make, right? They should be able to do whatever they want. And so there's within this libertarian space, they don't understand that there can be market failure. There are some things that have market failure, like there's no agreeable price. And that was something I ran into a lot as a developer in open source in these ecosystems where there are a lot of people making money off of things. And you're trying to produce a public good, like a wallet that's simple. And there's no incentive for any particular person to pay for those things. And so you have to do like fundraisers, and it's sort of like whoever says the fanciest thing gets the money, and then they just sort of like never finish the product, right? And if they wait long enough and people forget that they didn't actually deliver the last thing, they can keep doing it.
The reason why governments exist, right? Infrastructure. That's basically the argument.
That's pretty much the core thing. I mean, there's arguments that roads may or may not, may get built without the government. I like there wouldn't be as many roads, right? Like there is also an argument that the infrastructure has to be built before the demand. People didn't necessarily know they needed the internet until the DARPA came and built it for defense reasons. Did people know they needed GPS? Like GPS was really expensive to spin up, and it was for other reasons than like routing your car around.
Why should I pay for a road that I don't use, right? This would be then the argument. So it would be only like it would be very hard to.
But at least in the U.S., most goods are shipped around on 18-wheelers, right? So it's the road itself is subsidized so that businesses can easily transact, and then you benefit from that because the cost of delivery is lower, right? Otherwise, it would be passed on to you in the shipping costs. Yeah, I mean, I don't have answers to all this, but what I do know is that like open source software is a pure public good. It's non-excludable and non-rivalrous. So there's no agreed upon market price for my labor contributing to it. And yeah, I mean, you see this with Bitcoin Core, where they won't change the block size because they took investment from a bunch of banks and are producing some other product that requires the block size to be small. And this is why, if you follow Bitcoin Cash, why Ecash ultimately forked off and are just doing their own thing, and they're delivering a lot better products. So I ran into this where I didn't want to spend my own money funding everything, and I didn't want to essentially have to buy Bitcoin Cash to onboard users on the Stamp, which leads me to this fact that I sort of had to start a new Doge-like cryptocurrency that was free, right? It has no market price, so I can just give it away and you can use the messenger. So it's sort of like an access token of messenger. And that's how I've been onboarding users, is like, hey, if you believe in the same things that I believe in and you want to use this messenger, here's tokens, you can use it. And eventually if enough people use it and onboard other people that believe those things, that token will actually develop market price.
Yep.
Right. And it's interesting because at that point, like all the early adopters will be people that are ideologically aligned with freedom, like libertarians of various sorts, people that believe in freedom of speech. Those will be the early adopters. They'll have the tokens, and it transfers economic power to them when other people have to sign up later. All of these things work out really well together, assuming that you can persuade people to work together on a project like this and use it together. And that's the hard part, because there's no funding initially. Like you have to have people who are willing to take risk of either time, money, uh, outreach. Like it all comes back to time, right? If you don't have time and you don't need money, it's your time. But it requires people who actually ideologically believe in this stuff to risk some of their time to build a system like this. I've been at it for 4 years now. In 2019, it was me, and I talked about it on a podcast, and then one other dev started working with me on it. And then it was two other devs, right? And after 4 years, there's probably like 15 people working on it here and there. And a few hundred users, right? So it's still small, but it's nice to see it grow. And part of the ideology around having a token and the system is that everybody gets paid in this imaginary currency that we've all agreed has value in being able to send it to each other. I don't know. It gets down to sort of the roots of humanity in many ways of what makes something valuable.
Shells, exchanging shells for goods.
But it comes down to your value system as an individual. How do you stack rank these different things? And the freedom of speech is, on the top there. If you believe that people should be able to do what they want and suffer the consequences, right? Then because then karma has a way of punishing people sufficiently most of the time is what I've realized in my life is that like I don't need to like invoke retribution on them. Like they're usually miserable after people anyways. And if you believe that, then like crypto has value to you, and having a social network where you can speak freely without spam and also keep your identity, right? Be able to transfer it around. And meet the scale issue is like there are other solutions on the market than what I'm producing, but many of them, if you look at them closely, is how they're designed. It's like they're not going to be able to support even the volume of signal, right? You get 300 million users, and it's like you can't talk on it anymore. Like there needs to be a system where everybody can talk on it. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to deal with the you're going to have more fragmentation than is desirable. Like you ultimately want to have an open system. Like everybody has an email address, right? Why does everybody have an email address? This is like different companies can operate these, right? So they can profit in a shared market. Yeah, it's a common platform, and that's kind of that's part of the difference with what we're building here is we're providing a protocol and a reference implementation for essentially an email client on top. You can run it, and you can host your own white boxed version of the client. They can all talk to each other. So that's kind of the core of the whole idea. I don't know if there's anything else really to say. I could talk for hours and hours about how it all works and why all the decisions were made. But
I think what is an important question, which I think I asked myself, and I guess also some of the viewers ask themselves, is I mean, you're building the system, right? And of course, for you, the first users will be other crypto people. But to make it work, as you said, you have to onboard non-crypto followers at some point. So, I mean, there must be some, and I know that you are thinking about these kind of things and try to make your system. I mean, for a crypto system, I am on StamChat, and for a crypto-based system, it is already quite user-friendly, I have to say. I was quite surprised. I thought it would be much more complicated than it is. And But I guess when you get like completely non-crypto people on it, likely it will have to evolve a little bit. So how do you organize this process? I mean, this is kind of an entrepreneurial process, right? You think like you test things out, or you know, things fail. You have assumptions personally how things could work. Probably they're not working like this. How do you personally deal with this? How you work with that?
At one point, I wasn't a crypto person. I find all of these things ridiculous. So here's the first user is me. I'm designing something for me to use, and I don't like complicated UIs, but I also am like, who am I targeting? My friends, right? And so if they can't get through the sign up process, these are not crypto people, right? Most of my friends are not crypto people. And actually, amusingly, crypto people are the least likely to use Stamp
Why is
that
that?
I've found. They think it's a stupid idea. Like they think I'm crazy.
Really?
Because it flies in the face of like everything crypto people typically believe.
What, things should be complicated or not work? Is it?
Um, like they don't understand why they would want to pay to message. They don't understand why they would want a token that is intentionally not valuable. Like it's like like it's an inflationary token intentionally to keep the price down. So otherwise, like, why would you use it in messaging?
Yeah. I mean, Cyprian made
Right.
a good remark to this in one of the last podcasts I had with him, that utility will always go towards the cheaper coins, right? Because the cheaper the coin, the cheaper the transaction, and the cheaper acting on that chain, right? So every utility will
Well,
always move to the cheapest possible coin.
yeah. So I mean, and then also we have like a developer fund built in. Like we follow the Zcash model. It doesn't go to just one person. Like we have uh sort of multiple different things that we fund directly so that there's just like not a bust factor there. Um, and people can see like where the funds are going. Um, it's like like Bitcoin Cash. Oh, they didn't want that 8% dev fund to go
Yeah.
to ABC, right? They ideologically believe that these things should be like on a volunteer basis. Like if you're a developer, you should like become a religious monk and just like code. But meanwhile, miners are like making money off the code you write, right? But the argument is that like, oh well, we can't uh we that makes it not decentralized. Uh, and then they'll tell you a number of different ways that you should make money as a dev, like, oh, you should mine, or oh, you should run a consulting business on the side, right? But if I do those things, I also just could just make money doing those and not actually do the development. Or you should buy a bunch of coins and then just make Bitcoin Cash really valuable somehow by like contributing it to scaling. It's like it's marginally, it's like on the margins, you're not gonna like be able to support yourself at a day job, like a day job would. So it's an unfortunate trade-off. Is like if you want to have these public goods built, there does need to be uh, sort of agreed upon community funding to different projects from a block reward. This means that there's like value created for free because miners don't spend electricity on those coins. And this allows the government of the coin to bribe people, right? PayPal model, like, can we use the coin? Here's some coins. Like and there's a number of things like that where people just find it completely insane. And I I understand why they don't agree with it. Um, but over 4 years of trying to build this, I keep running into problems, and like the only solution, there's always trade-offs. And if I want to solve the problem, I have to do certain things and make certain trade-offs. And people outside of crypto understand these trade-offs. People inside crypto don't necessarily understand it. Like I work with a lot of software engineers. During the day, I work in Silicon Valley, which is part of the reason I understand how these like horrible ad systems and whatnot work and why I don't like them. And a lot of other developers here are like very excited about Stamp, but it just needs some polish and like a mobile app and notifications finished, because they'll sign up, right? And I send them a message, and it's like
I had that with you actually when we organized that
yeah,
podcast.
I gotta go.
You wrote me
and like yeah, I gotta go on the Signal and like message the person like, hey, I
wrote you
a message on Stamp, right? And so those notifications are like a really important part. And once those notifications are done, there's actually like a lot of people that will use it that I know personally, but the vast majority of them are not crypto people. They're just like normal friends, family, other developers in the Bay Area that think it's important and they're not necessarily libertarians, but they see the issues with having these companies that have such control over everything. And so there is a lot of interest, and it's nice to see that it's mostly people outside of crypto. And the sales pitch is a lot easier. You're not like, hey, buy my Bitcoins or buy Bitcoins, right? Like, why should I buy Bitcoins? You're not asking them to buy anything. You're like, here, use this with me. Here are some tokens. And that was the original like Bitcoin onboarding mechanism, right? So I don't think it's I think it kind of solves that problem as well. But I do find it ironic that it's like much harder to persuade crypto people to actually even log in.
Yeah, would also not have guessed that, but I think it's good because I think sometimes the problem in crypto is that it's too religious, sometimes too religiously libertarian, and often obvious problems with crypto are run over by just saying like, yeah, other people don't understand it, like like the others that don't understand it. So but this is not solving anything.
What is the goal though, right? You're trying to solve a problem, right? You need to. It's libertarianism is a philosophy and an ideology, but like one thing I didn't realize is that like I'm a pragmatist, but that's also an ideology. It's like we have a problem, we have a goal, go ahead and solve it, and figure out the solutions, and don't necessarily be attached ideologically to any particular path. I mean, you do have to have boundaries, right? Like this is like the problem with utilitarianism is it's like a sort of maybe a subset of pragmatism or something, is that if you don't have specific boundaries around what you're willing to do or not do, then it can go off the rails, right? But you need an ethical framework around that, not necessarily just like a blind ideology around like, oh, we don't have decentralization, especially like the decentralization is a network. It's a network property. It's not like you can't have decentralized. Like somebody has to compile the software, sign the binaries, and distribute it to the exchanges or whatever the customers are, right? Like that's a centralized process, regardless of what you say otherwise. So the argument, when you really dig into it, if you've worked in the space, falls apart. But a lot of crypto users, they don't understand that like there's that process of like Blockstream engineers compile the Bitcoin core binary, sign it, and do a release for all the exchanges and miners, right? Like that's centralized.
70% of the hash power of Bitcoin was for some while in China. I mean, like, that's also a form of centralization, right? You run always in, like, I think this is with every system like this at some point, because you have people who are maybe doing more or are luckier than others or better than others, and they always start to collect more in any system, right? This is with financial systems like this, and this will be also always
Yeah.
like cryptocurrencies will always be like that. So this is not
Yeah.
avoidable, and this will always lead to centralization, right? If you have there's always like a attack vector, right? The government can always come and can say like, hey, you're the biggest company on crypto, you're closed. It's always a risk, right? There's always that risk, and I think the only way to do that is implementation, right? If more and more people use it, you'll have less and less that risk of centralization, but that implies
Correct. Yeah.
yes.
Yeah, that's well, it was interesting. I was talking to Omri at the Ecash conference, and this totally unrelated thing came up. Is I guess in Scotland, I don't use people that have to verify this. Is like the government can come and like take any land at any time for various purposes, and so businesses are somewhat scared of that, and they do some kind of like sale that includes the lease back to the business of like every square foot of property. So like you don't have you don't have these massive the word slipped me, but you don't have these massive like blocks of land legally.
Yeah.
So if the government wants to come in and like take the land, they have to file paperwork against like thousands and thousands of owners.
Yeah.
And it becomes a bureaucratic nightmare for them. And this is the idea behind part of the idea behind Stamp is that like it doesn't use like onion routing and these sorts of things, but it is intended that a lot of people can run nodes, and those nodes don't need moderation, right? They don't need moderators to run them. You just need to run a node. Whereas like the other systems that are trying to do this, like what's the Matrix? I think is the one that Gab is like has its own version of, but they're like banned from the rest of the Matrix network. I think is that right?
I think so. Yes.
That network has to have moderators. Like that's expensive for the people that run the nodes. They can't just spin up a node.
And
right?
risky, right? Because you know what's happening in the node, which might also not be wanted.
Correct. Yeah. So Stamp, you just run a node. The fact that there's this crypto cache to the messages means that you don't need to really moderate it, but also all the traffic's encrypted, so you don't know what it is. You have plausible deniability on all this, and it's just a generic messaging system. And so the majority of use is normal, like reputable use, like you're talking about. There will always be some minority of people that are using it for illicit purposes, but that's the trade-off that you make from being able to criticize politicians. You also have to sort of allow these people that are not very good people to use it. Like you have to let the politicians use it also.
I mean, it's never a clear cut, right? That's the thing. I mean, if you do free speech, you have to also live with people that misuse it. You cannot stop that. You have to live with people who have different opinions than you. That's currently also often a big problem. And
yeah,
I think you don't. You cannot say like, "Oh, this is still free speech and this not anymore," because as soon as you make that separation, you can always make the argument, which is currently happening, right? When you look at Twitter, like I don't necessarily agree with what Trump or anybody else says on Twitter, but it doesn't mean that I'm not agreeing that that person should be on Twitter and should be able to say whatever they want there. And then I can tell him to fuck off if I don't like what he says. But
mute. He's not paying you enough, so you just don't listen to him. Like how much is he actually paying you? And then it's by having, if they want to broadcast messages on Stamp, if they want to post like a public message, they have to burn the coins, which is another reason it's use an inflationary crypto. But that means that these people that want to like just post garbage publicly, like they pay the entire community, which is another sort of interesting. Like, let's say China wants to come in there and like propagandize all the libertarians on Stamp. Ironically, they have to buy these coins and then burn them and pay all the libertarians to see Chinese propaganda or Russian propaganda or whatever. I don't know. It's going to take a long time. I don't expect this to take off quickly, but one podcast at a time. Hopefully, win some minds, and it always accelerates, right? The more users you have, the more users you get. So
yeah. So how can get people on it? Maybe when we're already at it, directly explain that as well, because I guess many of my viewers aren't, but now might be interested.
Yeah. So if I used to distribute like desktop binaries and everything, but I found that I was iterating sort of too fast to maintain all these builds. I'm just using Quasar to sort of build out a rapid prototype of it. It's pretty easy to get started if people want to develop on it. And I publish a PWA on web.stampchat.io. And I think I need to refill the faucet, but there's a link to the Discord, which has faucets in it as well. You just sign up there. You can read some of the public content, like the broadcast messages are available to look at. And then you can sign up after that by like spending some tokens that you have to get. Should be, I think it's pretty self-explanatory for most people.
Links will be in the description.
Yeah. And I guess the disclaimer, like it is alpha kind of quality software. And I'm not advertising it heavily yet because of that. Like at a point where it is ready and has notifications, then I'm gonna try to like go out and really like push for new users. But if you're like interested in it and you want to support the project and like help with things, there's a lot of stuff even for non-developers to do for a project like this. Come check it out.
Sounds very interesting. Yeah. So maybe one last question. I think we're already overdue. Also, for you it's early, for me it's late. But one last question I have. You said before that you are out of a reason in crypto that probably nobody else is. Are you willing to share that reason? What is your reason? We heard already a little bit your let's say like your motivations. But maybe you can tell a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I mean, it's somewhat similar to other people's motivations, but I'm just like I'm very much a centrist politically, although I'll like prefix that with I like this guy JReg online. It's I call myself an anti-centrist in a way. Like I'll fall politically on the like dead center on a political map, but I don't believe in like middle ground solutions. I like usually feel that like some extremist view has like a good answer to a problem, but then they maybe take that and like apply it to too much stuff. It's like the far right is like very good at conserving things but maybe they forget that they need to have empathy for homeless people or something, right? But maybe not the government's job to pay homeless people to do drugs in the street either, right? Like that's the problem in the Bay Area, is that people are like maybe overly empathetic, but then they don't directly do things, and they like, yeah, we'll just like vote to have the government throw $300 million at this problem, right? And it just makes it worse. So there's like pieces of every extreme. There's some like nugget of truth to why people believe that, and you find that like hard and caps don't necessarily see the truth of like authoritarian communists, right? Like there's a reason why they're authoritarian communists, and there are a reason why all these different views exist in the extreme. But the people that are there often they don't investigate the other ideologies and see the truth in them. And I've like made the rounds in a way, and I appreciate all of the extremist views. I just don't. When you do that, you start seeing that like this is true and this is true, but there's other garbage that sort of falls out of it from people focusing too much on like one core truth of the world.
So basically, really like practical, concentrated on the practical thing. What solves the problem? It doesn't matter from where it comes, but what solves the problem?
Yeah, and my issue is like when I was 12, so going back to things, is I was like, where does money come from? Like, why can't I print my own money? And I think this is a fairly common story, right? And I am very, I don't think it's fair that I can't print my own money. I think everybody should be able to print their own money. I don't.
No, you did.
Yeah, so now that's what I'm doing, but not, you know, I actually don't really want to maintain a cryptocurrency. It's just sort of like I had to in order to build this other thing that I believe in. But the like I don't have a problem with a centralized issuer of currency necessarily, but the problem is their incentives are like, what is it, the Cantillon effect? Like inflation isn't felt equally, right? And so like the closer you are to the issuer, like you have more purchasing power over time,
you get the money
things
earlier.
are centralized. Yeah. And so you see is like the financial, like when a central bank is created, like slowly the financial industry is like a larger and larger portion of the economy over time, and to the detriment of everything else. And so I believe that shouldn't really be in the hands of anyone, right? Like to the best of our ability, we should just sort of have this automated system that creates these polished shells or whatever you want to, like however you want to talk about them. Like, and so I see cryptocurrency as a way for us to sort of agree on one token, not need a military to enforce non-counterfeiting, right? Like you don't need the Secret Service to have cryptography. You don't need a military to prevent, you know, North Korea or whomever from printing fake dollars. And then it's just agreed upon by social consensus. Like with the cryptocurrency that we built for Stamp, we're trying to make it a stable cryptocurrency. Like that's one of the problems we're trying to solve, is introduce cryptocurrency that is algorithmically stable without needing a peg. It's sort of TBD as to whether that actually works out, but it takes this process of people like looking at data and then deciding like what interest rates should be and who should get the money, right? Like I can't go to the Federal Reserve and directly get a loan, right? I have to go through like multiple layers of banks. So I'm not in that privileged position. Like there really shouldn't be privileged positions like that. Now you could look and say like, oh, well, you've added a dev fund, and so now there's a privileged position in the economy. Yes, but there's multiple examples of in crypto. It's sort of like time is compressed. Like in 10 years, we've experienced like all these boom bust phases that like you would have needed to see over like hundreds of years. And we've seen like 2 or 3 times in crypto now where the core dev team has made some decision the user base didn't like and gets ousted, right? So if you think about these in terms of governments or banks or whatever, if the dev team makes a decision that is maybe tyrannical, they can't actually enforce it, and you have sort of a nonviolent revolution. And that's one of the really like the core innovations of cryptocurrency, is that you can have you get rid of the government without needing guns. And so I don't necessarily see like having semi-privileged positions in crypto as especially if the issuance is algorithmic to maintain stability, is like being the same kind of problem as there is with fiat currencies that are inflationary. Yeah, I don't know if that answers your question, but I think money should be fair. Money should be fair, right? Like everybody should have equal access to money, and the value shouldn't be like going down over time and like robbing them and push them into higher tax brackets and whatnot. Like there's so many problems with the way these currencies are managed, the way these government currencies are managed, and I don't necessarily. I think that these fiat currencies were the best technology we had for money prior to crypto, right? Like some people are like, oh, we should return to gold. There are reasons why we're not using gold. Like the fiat currencies are better technology, but now we have something that is, we have something that is better now. Crypto is better in a number of ways. So that's what got me interested in crypto, is just like this making fair money that is ethical, that the issuance doesn't go to like bombing children in the Middle East in order to like maintain value as a oil currency, right? Because that's the privileged people in USD. It goes to like Lockheed Martin first, right? They're the ones that are getting it first. And then their employees spend it at Safeway to buy groceries. And then the Safeway employees go and use Facebook. And then advertisers advertise the Safeway employees. And then, some engineer gets paid. So like I'm participating in the system by using it. Right? Like I'm giving value to the money that Lockheed Martin is using to make bombs by working for USD. And so, that's one of the other things is like where people could have a huge impact on forcing adoption is like if software engineers can find a way to fund themselves through building these products that are decentralized, now they have to be paid in crypto. If they enforce that, well, that's a huge tyranny of the minority. Software engineers have a ton of power, even individually, on the economy. If software engineers got together and agreed that in order to get software, you had to use a monetary system that didn't result in the bombing of children, like that would actually be a big problem for people that want to bomb kids. And so there's a number of these, like, it all goes back to ideology, what you value, what you're willing to do in your free time, where you're willing to spend your money. But there are solutions to all of the problems that we've been facing in crypto. But people just have to get together and actually agree to like start working towards those solutions, rather than just like trying to go to merchants and be like, hey, will you use this crypto point of sale system? That's not going to do anything. Like, and furthermore, that kind of thing will just naturally fall out if the cryptocurrency is functioning for these other operations. It's like that's a secondary market, right? Speculation is a secondary market. Anyways, I could rant.
I think most people think that that's the main purpose of cryptocurrencies, the speculation, but it definitely isn't, right?
No, the main purpose, the main purpose is allow me to give you value, yes, in a currency that you as a person in my social network that doesn't involve blood, yes, and also has fair issuance. So anyways, thank you for listening to me. Appreciate it.
It was very good. I think it was super interesting discussion that we had. I think it's it's super interesting topic. I think also that after Prague, after the Ecash conference there, I better understood all of these things, and I also understand that there is like coming together a group of people who are willing to work on that, right? No matter what the cryptocurrency is that will be underlying, if it's Ecash, Lotus, or Bitcoin Cash, or whatever it is, right? It's just it has to be done. And I think this is what I at least take away from this. Yeah.
Yeah, and the other thing being that everybody has to get some of those tokens if they contribute value, right?
Yeah.
That is like a core value that I have is well, because I was seeing that people are not being paid in most of these projects that are trying to promote crypto. Like everyone should get some tokens, no matter how little they do. And that's also a way to onboard people, because you get somebody that's a libertarian, doesn't know crypto, but they can maybe produce a newsletter. They can get paid in crypto for, I don't know, a couple hours a week, which is volunteer work.
Yeah.
It's like, that's another way to get people to consolidate on a common solution, because we have way too much fragmentation now. This is Kai.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
I don't know how to pronounce his name exactly, but yeah, I mean that's
Kai. Yeah,
that was his point. Is there's too much fragmentation. We need to run a defrag operation on the libertarian crypto people.
I mean, it's very true, right? I mean, you cannot currently, it's a mess. I mean, I guess the current downturn of crypto will solve that. A lot of cryptocurrencies will hopefully disappear. I mean, it's sad when people lose their money, but I think this will be the only way how that will be resolved at some point. And a couple will be left.
Yeah.
And I hope they will manage to work together and build something together, because I think that's the future.
Yeah. So thank you for
this.
I appreciate it. I really appreciate these opportunities to get people to hear my perspective, because I'm hoping to convince people to be maybe a little more intolerant.
That's very good closing words. No, I really enjoyed this. I think it was super interesting podcast, and I hope we can do that at some point again, especially when a StamChat gets closer and closer to a full release for everybody. I would love to do that again in depth about StamChat.
Thank you.
Perfect.
Have a good one.
Thanks, Shammah. Bye.